So I realized I haven't journaled about what happened in ceremony, and I'm technically still in ceremony until later in May. My ceremony started when Venus and Mars moved into Aries, and then it stayed when Venus and Mars moved into Taurus, and now it's through my birthday. So this has been a really long ceremony for me, and it's been really interesting because a lot has shifted, and I can't wait to see what happens when I come out of it. But April 2nd was a huge day, and that was like a ritual and ceremony inside a ceremony. And I love those days. They happen a lot. But the process time is extensive. So David picked me up early April 2nd. I want to say like 3 a.m. or something. I mean, it was early. And then we picked up Nomi. And as we were driving, we stopped at Pu'uhuluhulu and had medicine. And then we were acclimated. And then we were driving up Mauna Kea, and David was telling of how our planet is now out of balance. And from our perspective, the stars have shifted. And he had learned this from tribes in the north, and that triggered when, like, wow, a couple of years ago, or a year ago, I can't even remember time. A couple of years ago, I was doing my sun salutations, and I always faced west, just naturally, like I'd never really tried. But then I noticed when my own direction had shifted north that something had happened. And so he's telling us this story, and I was looking through Iris trying to figure out when I had documented that, just the shifting of north, and I couldn't find it, but he was telling us the story. And so when we finally arrived at the visitor center, I'd never been there with such clarity. And so when I first saw the stars, honestly, I just I fell into it. I started sobbing. The inside of my head was screaming. And I realized after another car had pulled up later and shined light in my eyes that I'd been screaming inside my head, and I was sobbing and laying on the ground. That was a trip. I was just like, I don't even know how long it lasted. And so the energy was really different that day. Like, there were a lot of people showing up. It was really dark, and I can't see anything at night, really. And I was walking up, and I saw someone who I thought was holding arrows, and I was just like, wow, okay, today is the day. And then I got really, really, really scared because I started to follow it through, and I got really deep, and I realized for my spirit, going to the summit is like a transformation. It's like moving from this world into the next world. And for me, it equated like a death. And I wasn't sure how that journey was supposed to go for me. I didn't feel like, and at each step, I just kind of worked it through, and I had to go into a vow of silence for a little while. I sent Matt a text, and I told him that I was scared. And all of a sudden, I just felt like this protection over me. And someone said, I was just sitting on the ground, and someone said, "We're under Scorpio." And I just started crying, and I checked my phone, and he had sent me a little message that he was going to send me energy. And I felt it. And so then I wasn't scared anymore. And I told him how much I loved him. And I was just so full of love, and I didn't want to be away from him. That us apart just felt like a power struggle. And he told me he loved me. So that gave me a lot of strength. And I knew why I was there. Mauna Kea is just such a communication tool, and there's just so many qualities to this. The sacredness of it, the environmental, which is, in my opinion, the sacredness of it, the political, you know, just the identity. I mean, there's just so much with it. So, but I still didn't know how, like, my spirit was supposed to participate. I was worried because I realized, like, the kapuna have the knowledge. And so for them to go to this summit, for anything to happen to them, like, that knowledge would then go with them. So, like, you have to protect them. But at the same time, like, how do you navigate? I didn't feel like, because I'm not one of the first guardians, I didn't feel like the summit was my place. Like, that day was not my pilgrimage. But I recognized, like, the crosswalk was not for me either. And so I was just going to open to what happened while still trying to observe and protect what was happening. So it began, after all that, it started to begin like a normal day. Like, it eased a little and worked through that. I was in my vow of silence, you know, working with how to communicate, listening. And the sun came up. It was so beautiful. Such a beautiful day. And more people started to arrive. And it felt really, really good. And then the police came, and the bulldozers, or whatever those things were, those machines. And it was just, you know, like any other day. We started our march, and then the police came over and were like, this is not going to work. So Lanakila said that he announced he was walking to the Mauna. The Mauna was calling, and anyone who wanted to join was welcome. So I offered that pilgrimage my energy and light. And I just knew immediately what I was supposed to do. So I walked along behind them, and I just channeled light. I sent out calls I sent out light. As above, so below. I offered rainbows for the pilgrimage, for the Mauna. I sent out calls. I was a light worker that day. We made it to the gravel, which in my opinion was, you know, we were off the concrete. We're the beginning of sacred space with no interruption. Even though the concrete, it's symbolic, but you can go through it. But once my feet like had that connection to the land, that was all I needed. It was really amazing because I had always worried about the temperature, but I was realizing, like, with my energy rising, because we were doing major energy work, but with my energy rising, like I could feel the heat. Totally calm. It was, I can't even begin to describe it. So others were marching in their pilgrimage. We formed a line. We were holding a beautiful rope of tea leaves, and we turned our backs to the agents of injustice, and we faced Mauna Kea, and they came one by one and pulled us from our pule. Oh, that's right, too. We had a pule at the gravel with even some of the police, the agents of injustice, joined in the pule. And, we directed our energy. And then as we were standing there, two actually came up to me. And I wouldn't really say or acknowledge. I just stood there. And they pulled the rope from my hands. And I do not walk for them. I don't resist, I don't assist. And so I was concerned about my injury. But the beautiful thing was with where we were directing our energy, as they were dragging me, I felt light as a feather. And I was not in any pain. Actually, my arm is kind of healed. And I was just breathing my dragon breath on the ground, just trying to awaken anything else that was still asleep. It was nice. And when the agents of injustice put